Hello, lovely people. Sorry for the late start today. Had a bunch of errands to run specifically to the post office. That was a real pain in the tuchus. I got some orders in. I really wanted them to get out the door so that they hopefully would arrive before the holidays. I'm not sure why our little preview there of the Kickstarter is not visible. Is that the right one? Try to refresh that if we can. Not an option. There we are. That's the one we want. See if we refresh that. Hope everyone's having a lovely day. We're going to work on some magic items. Specifically, point the correct direction. We're going to work on a magic tome. This was something I showed previously. This is something I sculpted in Shaper 3D and brought into Nomad Sculpt. I've created some images that we can overlay on top. I basically want to have... This is going to be for the Prayer's Handbook. For folks who don't know, it's a little Kickstarter bottom corner there, prayershandbook.com. The idea is it's clerics who think this all might be a game. I started posting some examples over on social media, like a Dragonborn who thinks that their player is a guy named Gary who sells what's called aluminum siding. And it's things like that where the real world will bleed into the game. It does that every game people play anyway, because they're going to make references, pop culture references, musical references. But giving this an excuse to actually happen. And so we're going to sculpt... well, actually, I kind of have sculpted the basic pieces in Illustrator. Used a website called SVG to STL, which changes SVG files, which are sort of primitive vector illustrations, and turns those into extruded STLs. Real simple thing. So like if you have like a basic logo or a basic really any flat geometry, it will just extrude that. So it'll take a lettering, for instance, and just give it some depth. And then you can bring that into a 3D program, and that's what we're going to do here. And those elements we're going to layer and create different heights on the cover, so that it'll have a 3D effect. And then eventually this book will get printed. It has a cavity inside it. This is not the one I modeled initially. Maybe I should work on that one. No, this is the later file. I'm going to just do this for now. Subpar. This is not ideal, but we'll figure it out. That the cover is selected. Gizmo tool, pivot point. We're going to slide the pivot point back to roughly the hinge. And the idea... Oh, it's connected. Oh, that sucks. Somehow I've got them grouped together. And when I... Over in Shaper 3D, for purposes of an early test, 3D printed test of the hinge, I grouped some things together. And that's what I brought in here for sculpting our cover. And so some of the pieces are grouped in a way that are less than ideal. Telemont. But can the character reach up and slap the player when the player makes them do something stupid? I don't think so. If they're a player like me, then they're already hitting themselves for the dumb things they do. But it is things where, like when the final boss fight happens, they can make references to the music that plays, or cue the operatic choral music as we attack the boss. But I've been working on the character class itself, and I'm feeling really good about it. Just like with the rogue and with the Intoximancer, with the death-dealing rogue and the Intoximancer, tons of options for what could happen for the players. This really is... it's no difference here, but I'm really happy with these ones. I mean, I'm happy with the others as well, but this, because it's meta and how weird it is, it's really important that the abilities they have feel thematic and tied to the class. The cool thing about clerics is that every 2 levels, they get 2 spells that they know all the time. Normally, they have to memorize certain spells. Each day, they can refer to their prayer book and memorize different spells that they have access to during the course of a day's activities. Usually, clerics have like their we're going to go into town set of spells, and they've got their we're going to go into combat set of spells. But then there are the ones you always have prepared, and each subdomain of cleric has a bunch of different spells, and this one's very flavored for meta. Like they get counterspell, and they get a couple of spells that are specific to this book. So I think that's really fun. But the abilities they have that they get at levels, gosh, they get level 1, 2, 6, 8, and then 17. Huge gulf between 8 and 17. Some of the subclasses have other gradations of like 2, 6, and 8. Like they'll kick in and give an extra little kick along the way before you get to 18. So it's not just this huge span before you get to level 18. But also the Prayer's Handbook, the magic item that the cleric gets, that will level up with them, and that will create other opportunities for, you know, making the leveling up process more fun. Really, it's like cleric should have fun, and the class really leans into that. I'm going to show you here the initial version of how I layered this cover in. Group view. This is the initial version I have so far. It was basically just a test. You know, what can I bring in? What elements will be maintained in the process of coming from Illustrator into this program? There were weaknesses here. I think I brought in like 4 or 5 different layers, and so things are of certain heights, like the swoop behind that D12 Saturn and the D10 floating in the upper right. That is the same height as the sun shape in the middle. Oh, and the sun shape in the middle is meant to hold like a D20. And there'll be other dice floating in the environment and attached to the book in different ways. But I'm going to bring them in a way that allows me a little more control. So like the sun will be a separate piece from those 2 bands. The Saturn shape around the D12, less effective. I'm not sure when this idea happened, but I was trying to think what the front of the book would look like. And I was thinking about like old maps, and then using the dice and the game elements as a sort of star chart. And that kind of, I'm really happy with how that's coming together so far. But again, I've recreated all the levels here, all the layers here. I'm going to have to bring those in individually and set them to the correct heights, put them on the front of the book. This is not the final book. There's also going to be a keyhole that goes in that piece. I can't set that up now too because I have to re-export all this from Shaper 3D. And the hinges don't line up, but you can see roughly how the hinges will go. Dice in place of the planar bodies makes sense for this theme. That's what I thought. I wanted the central D20. The trouble with D20s, they look great on their own as they're floating, but when they get embedded or half embedded into something, they lose their shape really quickly, or they create weird cantilevered forms. And I'm thinking about the 3D printing of these things. What's really fun about I got the 3D printer about 10 days ago, maybe a week ago. And I can't believe I've been sculpting for 2 years and haven't had one. It's taught me so much. For some reason, the Intoximancer prints great. I think the anchored cape, I think the foot placed on the barrel, I think just the general shape of the figure is so strong. It's even weird with that belt. If I had a brain in my head, I would have had that belt run alongside the body, and the tome that's attached to the Intoximancer would have been flush with the hip. None of those gaps. But this printed out of an FDM printer, it's oversized, it's 3 times size. I'm not a big person, but I'm also not so tiny that this would be an actual size mini. But there's a lot of smoothness on the cape. Very happy with how this turned out. This is using a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. There's a finer nozzle, and what's really interesting about FDM is I think the same thing goes for resin printers. That the smaller the layer height, the longer it takes to print. So I printed that in a few different ones. This is the helm that's on the cover. I printed that. I'm going to print a larger one. There was a little bit of shifting in this print. I'm still trying to fine tune the settings. But my very first sculpt was Sir Quimp. This is me teaching myself how to sculpt. Really happy with how this figure turned out. FDM printers hate this guy. He has arrows sticking out of him, which just doesn't work. There's one that actually works just fine, but the ones on his back, the supports that hold pieces up when you print them are are thicker than the arrows. So when you take the supports off, the arrows come with them because it feels like it's a branch of the tree support. But the sword printed very well and very straight. That said, the one I printed this morning and I showed over on Discord was a half-size version of the house. And in this one I thought I would show folks what the tree supports look like. Now in this case, I painted those tree supports in. What that means is the model appears inside the viewer, and I go in with a pen tool, basically the stylus, and I say attach here, attach here, attach here, and attach here. So when you see those little supports that attach to the corner of the roof here, I said put a point right there and let's see if that's enough to hold that entire roof up. And you can see it wasn't because there's some stringing there. What that means is the printer put the support all the way up and then started to try to draw that line, and there wasn't anything to hold it up, and so the filament just kind of hung like hay. I wanted to get this so I could see the mistakes, and you can see them in the... Let me get the camera nice and big. Don't know why I did that before. Full screen, where are you? There you is. So you can see that the awning at the top there didn't have enough support. I don't know why I didn't think there should be a support there. But overall, the supports for the hands on the side worked out very well. I put in just enough. But now I know where to go back in, and I can print this large. This is also printed at a very thick line height. So if you were to look at this up close, and you can... Let me see if you can hear this. That's my fingernail just hitting each one of the layer lines. So the idea is you can have the layer lines much thinner, like 0.08 down to 0.06 if you use a thinner nozzle. But I thought that was giving a good example of how this thing was coming along. And it comes out the print bed like this. Step back so folks can see it. This thing gets really hot. It's this is the textured PEI plate. It comes with a cold plate, which is much smoother, and you put a lot of glue on it, not only to help hold the figure down, help hold the sculpt down, but also to help remove it. Because once it does stick on the plate, you need something to loosen up a little bit. And then each one of these tree supports has to come off. Usually I would use pliers or so this little piece, you can see some stringing there between the two heights, and there's a bit of extra material here. I kind of used cheaper PLA. I have like a real simple one I have. I kind of want to go through it. But I'm going to pull those supports off, and I'll post a picture of this over on Discord later on. That side window turned out really well. Again, this is a very crude print, very low resolution. I wanted to print fast. You need a pair of nippers I use. Yeah, I've got them. I've got a whole kit full of stuff, but this is half size with low resolution. I can see those windowsills need some help too, need some love, a little bit of support. Maybe each one of those rafters as well. I was hoping the angle was enough to support it. What's really funny is the another support just came off. Nice. The chimney. When I put in automatic supports on this thing, come on, focus. When I put automatic supports on this chimney, it caked the entire chimney with plastic, like cocooned it to support it. And I'm like, I think it will stand. I think the angles are such that it would support. There's a little bit under here where you can see a little bit of failing. Like it just needs a little more love. But overall, not bad at all. Okay, let's get my giant noggin off the screen. It's like a bobblehead hour. Boom, there we are. Attach here, attach here, attach here. So when I say attach here, it means... Tell him I ask, how long till we get a life-size Maledicta? There's actually a guy making one out of metal. I don't think I've shared photos of that yet. But there's a guy who's actually, I think, acid etching the runes on the blade. Yeah, Shane, the whole toolkit. And also someone recommended a, which I don't have, a hobby torch. Like for creme brulee and things like that. A very focused flame that I can use to instantly evaporate stray filament, things like that. Any odd, what they call zits on the piece. But I'm going to have to reinforce this. Seeing this was a test to see where do I need to put more supports. Very happy with it. Shane Chunky Horse was the most used emote this year. That's awesome. But there's a ton of supports I have to remove from here and clip off of this thing. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. You can see what other ones we had. We had the Grognard. He prints very well. He's a much larger figure. Part of me wanted to print him in scale with the other figures, which means he would be twice this height and take over a day. One really cool thing happened. I have to say something about why don't you have precision arson tools? I ask myself that so often. In traffic, usually I ask myself, why don't I have arson tools? But the printer just released a firmware update, and they managed to. It's a very loud printer, and they just have released a firmware update that will make it much quieter. So, a lot of stuff to do today. We'll see how much we can get done. It's going to be a shorter stream. Sorry again about starting late. Going to re-import all the pieces, all the various pieces, and some new pieces for this cover here. Going to get them into position, knowing that I have to then re-import the book itself, and all the geometry of this. That has to come in, and then I wanted. Currently, this is fine. There's a box that will hold the zines. The idea is that this is going to be a box with a hinged lid. Inside, there will be a room for the zines that I produce. And I'm going to felt line the bottom. So the thinking is that the curved part of the book... What is it? This guy? This guy? Let me hide these other bits. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, that was a little stopper for the hinge. We don't need you. But this piece here would print separately, with large room for me to glue down a piece of felt. Then the pages would notch into place, the sides of the book, and that would leave the cavity to store the zines and to use as a dice tray. I'm not sure how the sound of dice hitting the interior of a PLA plastic could sound hollow, might be an annoying sound. I don't know if I should... I think felt lining the entire interior would be a nice touch, but would make fitting the books harder. I'd have to make the walls thinner. But these pages here are very regular. I just took flat rectangles and very flat cubes that were stretched out and slid them around and then hollowed them out. So they look like pages, but they look like very flat pages, and that's not cool. It's got to have more character. The pages have to be curled. There has to be little nicks and cuts. I want it to look like an old book. I don't want it to look like, I don't know, some fancy deckled edge from an overpriced sketchbook you would buy at a New York City art store. There's always that stuff in the front that kind of touristy gift stuff, and it's kind of like it's a sketchbook that you don't want to draw on because it's too nice a sketchbook. That's what that reminds me of. It doesn't feel like an ancient tome. All right, let's import some pieces, see if I cannot ruin this thing. I'll drink some coffee. Thank you for being here, folks who are here. If you want to check out the Prayers Handbook, it does run until the beginning of the new year. It launched on December 7th, a day which will live in Matt Colville's memory, with no other historical significance, except that was the day that Matt Colville launched the MCDM role-playing game. I don't think December 7th has any meaning other than that. Shane might correct me. And yeah, let's bring in some pieces and see if I can manage to not ruin this. We'll close that out. Import to scene. Not Nomad, but Shaper exports. Nope, 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 nope. Downloads? There we go. Okay, sure. Let's hope that these are even remotely aligned to each other. Add to scene, import new file. Downloads, we'll do this the same every single time. Oh yeah, they are aligned. Sweet. Add to scene, yes. Downloads, 40. In order to create these pieces in Illustrator and get a sense of their depth, I shaded each one a different value. 10%, 30, 40, all the way up to 100%. I think only 8 or 9 layers, 8 to 10 layers. And so each one of those had a different value, so I could see how they might look as a debossed imprint or effect on the front of this book. Which one I just bring in? Oh, great, they all have the same name. That's not helpful. All right. Add to scene, yes. Downloads 50. Add to scene, yes. Downloads 60. Okay, a little off. Not great. Add to scene, new file 70. Add to scene, downloads 90. So add to scene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Look at our list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. Okay, so it won't let me rotate. I guess I could rotate one at a time. I don't think it'll let me mathematically rotate it. But if we group them all together, I can select the group and rotate that. I think negative 90. That'll lay this thing flat. Yeah, everything is off. That's fine. That's fine. Lately, I have been watching on the YouTubes a painter named Bill Alexander. If you want to know where Bob Ross got all his stuff from, he's the guy. I love Bob Ross. I got to take some classes at the Bob Ross School. When I moved down to Florida, I didn't realize it was like 1 or 2 towns over. And so I went there and got to take some classes. Now he had passed away by the time I got to take classes. But oh boy, I want these two to be together, don't I? Move that back. I'm going to hide the book for a moment. All right, so this guy and that guy, I want to move them together. So I got to take some classes at the Bob Ross School. So I didn't get to learn from Bob Ross. Again, he had passed away. But I got to learn from the people he taught. which was wonderful. Uh, Bill Alexander. It's short for something. It's Alexander. I think is a very pretty name. So none of these are the same size. Great, great, great. How can I do this? If I select them all and I center them, can I center them? But Bill Alexander, my mom and my grandparents used to watch Bill Alexander's program on PBS. It's identical to Bob Ross's show, pretty much, except he is a stocky, ebullient German. So imagine I don't know. It's hard to imagine a cantankerous Bob Ross, but you could just see Bob Ross and the people who worked on Bob Ross's show learned a lot from that guy. He I grouped all those together. That was unintended. Trying to figure out why I think I know why. So I used a website called SVG to STL, and it will let you upload, like I said before, it'll let you upload an SVG file, extrude it, and then you can download that. I think in Illustrator, if you export an SVG file, it exports the file in and of just itself and nothing else. That's if you export from Illustrator an SVG file. If you save the Illustrator document as an SVG file, it becomes an SVG file that's inside the larger document that is the Illustrator file. So it's an 8.5 by 11 page with an SVG file element, an SVG element somewhere in that space. So when I did that for the previous version, which had 5 or 6 pieces, when I brought them all in, they all lined up perfectly because they were all lining that 8.5 by 11 workspace. All those workspaces lined up. In this case, I exported each one separately, so I guess it didn't have that. It didn't bring that kind of container with it, and so the pieces aren't lining up, and I'm trying to manually do it, and I think that might be more trouble than it's worth. Because I want this thing to... I don't want there to be gaps. I don't want there to be misalignments, and I've kind of went fancier with this second set of imports, so there could very easily be misalignments, like this planet here. And if the things aren't the same scale as one another, if they're coming in at different scales, then I have to manually adjust it. I also have to look into why the SVG files aren't super crisp. Like you can see that this shape that was a perfect circle. And now it's coming across as this chunky thing, which might not be bad in the context of a magic book, because, you know, keep sharp edges. Let's go higher than that. Yeah, it falls apart very easily, no matter how high a resolution I make it. But something like that isn't even smoothing it enough. So I think I need to figure out a way to get these extruded in a much cleaner way. I thought Shaper 3D could import an SVG file and extrude it, but it can't. So I need to look into that other program you all talked about. Fusion 360, and see if it can import an SVG file and extrude that. Certain pieces I really like, but I think these ones are just not working. So the idea is that it will look something like this when I'm done, but this had this had problems with it that I didn't like. We don't need that piece. One of the problems was that the ring around that D12 Saturn is recessed and it should be positive. Moose, have you seen the names of some Elons? Yeah. I think any name that could be a barcode seems real convenient. And I did try to change the orientation of this icosahedron to something more classic, like, oh heavens, wrong thing selected, like kind of that view of an icosahedron of a D20. Oh, I flattened it a little bit, so we can't quite rotate it, but you think that looks like a great D20 shape. But the second you import that into the object, try to flatten it to create kind of it immediately clips off the top. I feel like it needs to be distorted in order to look right. So I kind of just copped out and gave it the that pentagon shape. And so the idea is I'll be able to 3D print this book. I'll run a test of this and see if it works. And if it works, I'll make the STL available as part of the Kickstarter campaign. And for folks who don't want to print it themselves, I'll print it. I will print it and figure out how much filament it takes, how long it takes to print on the printer, because it's going to have to, you can't print the lid and the well of paper, like basically the paper shape, or the back of the book. I think the spine and the back of the book are one piece, the pages will be another piece, the cover will be a separate piece, and then the two hinges. Although if there's a mechanical option for that, I might look into that, like a bolt I can just purchase. But it will probably, I don't know how much plastic that will take or how much time that will take. But I do like the idea that I could make well, I can't really do multiple materials. What I could do is the cover could be one material, the back cover could be another material, and the spine, and the pages could be a third material, since that'll be a separate piece. I could print that kind of beige color, like I printed this guy. So it looks like paper. Looks a bit like paper. I have no idea if anyone would be interested in it. It might be something I bring to conventions, comic conventions, and gaming conventions if someone wants it. I think it'd be pretty cool. Huh. Okay. Let me save this. Put up the minis for a moment and take a look at what other stuff we can... yeah, Steve's next Kickstarter launches soon. So I need to update that. I think I'm going to have to re-import all these pieces, and I have to do that on my desktop. All right, folks, I think we're going to have to call it early today. I would love to have streamed more, but there's just too much work I have to do on my desktop computer, and I just am not set up to do that. I want one, if for no other reason than I'm a sucker for organization. Well, okay, let me ask you, Telemont. Looking at this from the side, let me hide the dice for a moment. Looking at it from the side, there's no way that will sit on a shelf. Because it's going to have that protrusion. We need you to troubleshoot technical issues live. I guess I can do that. Watch this middle-aged guy pull out his hair. I'll flatten that D20 shape, I think. But I just don't think it would fit on a bookshelf. It'll poke your other books. Don't ball your... This is all Photoshop. Have it in the stand as it will display prices. That's amazing. A book tray, a book stand. Shane, I think I can. I think like the D12s I have here at the top and bottom. I think those could be the same height, and there's going to be these protrusions of bolts. I think if I make them all the same height, I still just worry about a shorter book or any book with a nice finish is going to get poked by that shape. And then I have to decorate the spine with stuff. There's a lot to do, but I think I have to figure it out on the side. And one of the things I want to do is inside the Prayer's Handbook, we've got a bunch of magic items. We have the Helm of the War Duck, because this is based on War Duke's helmet, and I just didn't want it to be War Duke, so I thought feathers. I've had some experience sculpting feathers, and so now it's on the cover of the book, and it has to be in the book somehow. So I'm going to paint that, but I feel as though there's a lot of technical bits I have to do before I get to that point. There's the mace that's on the hip of the cleric. I got to paint that as well. I might have something fancy that, and then hide it. Yeah. Well, I think it'll be fun. There is going to be room for magnets. So I think 5mm by 2mm magnets that will go to. Hopefully they're strong enough. And I'll create the test version of this, a prototype. I'll share with everyone here. And if it works, I'll share that. And if it needs larger magnets, we'll get those. If it needs more magnets, we'll get those. It was very funny. I've seen a lot of models over on Printables and Thingiverse, other 3D repositories. And the caution is always, make sure you've got the polarity right. I love the idea of building one of these things, putting all this effort into it, and then permanently gluing in a magnet that refuses to let the book close. But that chimney really isn't attached. It's got some play to it. That's amazing. So I'm gonna clean this up. I'll post a photograph of it on the Discord. Again, this is all the stuff where I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't need it. And again, this isn't the software's fault. This isn't Bamboo Slicer's fault. It wanted to add, again, a cocoon around that chimney, and I'm like, I don't think it needs it because of the angle of the chimney. The angle of the top floors. But it really needs it on these back awnings. Basically, any place you see those kind of loose strings. Also, at the top here, each one of those rafters needs a support. So it needs a lot more support. I might just Sharpie this thing up and just say, you know, circle parts and adjust that. Again, I wish I could work on that in front of everyone here. I wish there was a version. And these supports are on there. Oof. Some of the ones just pop right off, and other ones are a real mess. I was also really concerned about... Let me see if I get full screen again here. And I'm going to go into the camera controls. Advanced. Autofocus off. This is a 0.2 layer height. The other ones I printed were 0.08, excuse me. So you can really see the horizontal striations here, but I was concerned about that. I don't know if you can see it in there. That sign hanging from the front of the building. So that seems to work. So I'll keep those as is. I do want to thin up the interface between the supports and the building itself, so that these supports will just come off a lot more easily than they do with this one. These are on there tight. All right, you lovely people. I appreciate you being here. Shane, if you're streaming later on, I'll definitely pop in. It was good to pop in on Thursday. I hope you all have a lovely night. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to print something else and look for me on Thursday. So again, I apologize for the short stream today. Hopefully I have some wonderful stuff to show you all on Thursday. And thanks again for everyone who managed to back the campaign and spread the word. It's gone really well. Emily, thank you for your support. Talmont, good to see you. Thank you. Shane, awesome to see you. Moose, good to see you too. Have a good night, everyone.